Well, they look like a construction crew, a pair of men in bright jackets and hard hats. But police say
You're not going to believe what's happening inside New York City. Right now, the skyline still shines like a polished promise. But beneath it, luxury and lawlessness now share the same address, merging in ways no one imagined possible. In neighborhoods where townhouses sell for $10 million or more, the wealthy are slipping away in silence, fleeing through back exits while the city's so-called compassionate leadership stays busy pointing fingers, dodging accountability, and blaming politics instead of acknowledging the exodus. Just last week, a team of men dressed like everyday construction workers, bright orange vests, reflective tape, hard hats walked straight into a gated mansion in Queens as though the deed belonged to them, and the cameras caught every second. Police later confirmed these men didn't sneak in, they orchestrated the break-in, hauling out a safe stuffed with cash, documents, gold, and jewelry worth roughly $2 million in under 5 minutes. Investigators discovered they had stalked the homeowner for weeks, mapping his entire life, his commute between his jewelry store and home, the nanny's predictable routine, the family dog's nightly walk. Nothing was random. Nothing was desperate. This was calculated strategy fueled by a simple reality every criminal in New York now understands. Consequences no longer exist. For generations, success in this city was something to admire, a sign of grit, persistence, and pride. Today it's nothing more than a glowing target inviting the next crew to strike. Families who spent decades building small fortunes are listing their homes without a whisper, convinced their next. Realtors quietly admit what officials refuse to say: wealth is bleeding out of the 5 boroughs. Moving trucks now line once quiet streets. Private security firms can't hire fast enough. And panic buttons, steel-reinforced doors, and silent alarms have become the new status symbols of the elite. Meanwhile, inside City Hall, there is only silence, slogans, and deflection. The mayor, more obsessed with battling Donald Trump on television than battling crime on his own streets, keeps preaching about equity while the city burns beneath the weight of its own policies. The NYPD is hemorrhaging officers. Morale has collapsed. And every beat cop knows the truth. They arrest the same faces every week. Watch judges release them by noon and see those very same criminals laughing on the same corners by dinner. This isn't reform anymore, it's surrender, dressed up as progress. 2 weeks ago, a 15-year-old boy walking home from school in Jamaica was swarmed and attacked by a group of 13 teenagers. Another moment swallowed by a city unraveling. What's happening in New York isn't staying here. Cities across America are copying this blueprint. And the results could make New York look like a preview reel for a much darker national future. The defund the police movement promised compassion, but delivered chaos. Thieves learned they could operate in broad daylight because fear was replaced with entitlement, and a neon vest or clipboard became a shield. People now assume worker, not predator. And that's why these crews stroll into neighborhoods worth tens of millions, plunder everything in sight, and disappear into traffic without a chase. One terrified homeowner summed it up perfectly: "I used to lock my door for safety. Now I lock it, knowing no one's coming if they break in." That's the new reality. Sexist doesn't guarantee safety. It paints a bullseye, and criminals move like ghosts, while leadership pretends it's progress. Worse still, the exodus has already begun. Wealthy families aren't waiting for the next break-in. They're gathering their children and their fortunes and heading somewhere they can finally sleep through the night. Because in New York City 2025, luxury no longer means security, it means risk. By sunrise, news of that $3.2 million heist had already echoed across every major network. But what the headlines missed was that this wasn't a one-off. It was another incident in a growing pattern turning New York's richest streets into open hunting grounds. Over the last year, home invasions in high-income zip codes have surged nearly 40%. Storage units filled with antiques and heirlooms are being emptied, and pharmacies in Queens now have owners sleeping behind their counters with shotguns propped against the door. Investigators quietly admit that more of these suspects are undocumented. Crews tied to transnational networks exploiting sanctuary loopholes as shields. Federal analysts call it a self-inflicted border crisis. They track offenders released under bail reform vanishing into migrant shelters only to reappear under new names weeks later. Every arrest acting like a reset button. Meanwhile, longtime residents pay the price. Property taxes climb, insurance premiums double, public services crumble, and luxury listings turn into whispered fire sales, not because of interest rates, but because of fear. Drive through Midtown after midnight and you can feel it in the air-boarded windows, darkened storefronts, empty sidewalks, and a sensation that the city, which once never slept, is now too scared to stay awake. Restaurants and chain-link fences now wrap around buildings that once hosted black-tie galas, the kind where limousines lined the curb and champagne never stopped pouring. Today, delivery drivers bolt their doors between stops, glancing over their shoulders like they're navigating a war zone instead of a work route. Families who once swore they would never leave Manhattan now spend their weekends touring homes in Connecticut, New Jersey, Florida, and the Carolinas. Looking for something new, York can no longer offer peace. Inside police precincts, frustration has swallowed whatever pride remained. Officers openly admit morale hasn't been this low in half a century. Because what's the point of making arrests when prosecutors downgrade felonies to misdemeanors before lunch, and the suspects brag about it on livestream? One viral clip showed a repeat shoplifter laughing into the camera, saying, "It's New York. Bro, we don't get locked up here." A sentence that perfectly captures what happens when compassion becomes policy and accountability becomes optional. The city that once celebrated resilience now confuses it with apathy, and lawmakers keep promising progress even as progress looks like plywood on storefronts, hollowed-out tax bases, and neighborhoods where middle-class families whisper to each other about leaving for good. City Hall keeps calling this reimagined justice, but on the street it feels like a complete surrender because every reform, built on optics instead of outcomes, comes with a cost. And in New York, that cost is measured in fear. Fear that the next knock on the door isn't a delivery, but a crew in neon vests pretending to fix a sidewalk. Fear that cameras will record everything and accountability will record nothing. Fear created by a justice system that doesn't punish crime anymore. It manages it like inventory, where offenders know the script, courts know the script, courts know exactly how the story ends. That's how one of the world's safest cities became an open experiment in how far a society can bend before it breaks. And while politicians praise themselves for equity, the only thing equal now is vulnerability. Everyone from a cab driver in the Bronx to a hedge fund manager in Brooklyn Heights carries the same uneasy feeling when they walk outside. If it goes wrong, no one is coming. By the second week, even the illusion of control had evaporated. Police scanners buzzed non-stop robberies in Queens, assaults in Brooklyn, carjackings in the Bronx, and officials weren't panicked because of the crime, but because of where it was spreading. Zip codes, once considered untouchable, Tribeca Park Slope, the Upper East Side, were suddenly appearing in the same nightly reports as housing projects miles away. And when even the wealthy can't buy safety, the city's entire narrative collapses. $1-million townhouses are sitting on the market for months. Security companies can't keep up with demand for steel-reinforced doors and private patrols. And the same people paying for all this protection are the ones funding the city's failing programs. Through record-high taxes, it's poetic in the cruelest way. New York's wealthiest residents financing the very chaos that's driving them out. The mayor keeps calling it temporary disorder, but economists call it what it is: flight. Moving companies report a 40% spike in outbound requests. From New York to Florida, New York to Texas, New York to anywhere that still enforces the law. Blue-chip firms that once helped rebuild the city after 9/11s are quietly relocating to states with lower crime and fewer regulations. Wall Street traders are moving their operations south, and analysts warn that when money leaves first, the culture follows. Behind closed doors, city officials admit they underestimated the fallout from bail reform. One internal memo leaked to reporters described the system as mathematically impossible to sustain, which is bureaucratic code for you can't keep releasing more offenders than you arrest without snapping the foundation in half. But ideology demands loyalty, and loyalty means pretending the experiment isn't failing, even when the streets tell a different story. In Soho, shop owners install steel shutters not for hurricanes, but for people. Land storefronts that once displayed designer handbags now hang handwritten signs, reading, "Closed until further notice." Tourists wander by confused, wondering if they stumbled into the wrong decade. But it isn't nostalgia, it's decay. Every petty crime has become a building block for something bigger. Starting with fare evasion, growing into theft, then robbery, then home invasion. Progressive leaders call it restorative justice. Victims call it abandonment. And the irony? The same people preaching equality now live behind walls while insisting walls don't work. The most chilling part is how normal it's all starting to feel. New Yorkers adapt fast. They always have. But adaptation isn't victory, it's surrender packaged as resilience. When residents brag about knowing which streets to avoid, that's not street smart. That's survival instinct, and survival should never be the standard in a city that once claimed to be the capital of the world. Analysts warn that this slow shift is what societal fatigue looks like. When people stop demanding safety and start adjusting to chaos, it doesn't erupt overnight, it creeps in quietly. The way graffiti spreads across subway walls. First, a few tags, then entire tunnels coded in messages no one reads but everyone feels. Cars, and eventually nobody notices the paint because it just blends into the scenery. The same way the chaos blending into daily life becomes background noise, crime as ambient sound, dysfunction as rhythm, leadership as performance art. The mayor smiles for cameras while stores shutter behind him. Activists shout through megaphones, insisting property crime is economic protest. And meanwhile, the middle class, the teachers, nurses, firefighters, shop owners, the people who once carried this city on their backs, keep packing moving trucks while City Hall debates pronouns instead of policies. Police still show up when they can, but response times stretch longer each month. and officers admit privately that they've stopped chasing certain suspects because the courts won't hold them anyway. That's not policing anymore. That's theater, a hollow performance costing lives, livelihoods, and the last shreds of public faith. New York isn't dying from a lack of money, talent, or spirit. It's dying from a vacuum of will, a leadership so committed to slogans it can't see the consequences piling beneath its feet. Every time officials call this progress, the message to criminals is unmistakable. Keep going. By the time City Hall realized what was happening, the exodus was visible from the air-moving vans pouring out of the boroughs like arteries draining life. Traffic filled with cars packed to the roof. Wealth no longer trickling out, but fleeing. And instead of asking why, the mayor blamed everyone but himself. He called departing residents selfish. He labeled critics fearmongers. But you cannot gaslight numbers. In the last fiscal quarter alone, nearly $11 billion in taxable income left the city for other states. That's not panic. That's survival. The irony is almost cruel. The same city that once promised opportunity now punishes achievement. Equality has warped into resentment, success into suspicion. Build a business. You're privileged. Defend your property. You're violent. Question the system, enabling both crime and corruption. You're extreme. Meanwhile, the mayor's own office quietly expands security details, installs metal detectors, and approves funding for armed escorts at official events, protection for politicians, vulnerability for citizens, hypocrisy defined in high resolution. Inside luxury towers, fear is thick as humidity. Residents whisper about selling before the next property tax spike. And one building manager admitted half his tenants have moved out of state. They don't even cancel their leases. He said, they just stopped coming back. What was once a skyline of ambition now glows like a warning sign. A monument to what happens when ideology outruns reality. And it's not just crime pushing people out, it's the feeling of being unwanted. The sense that the government sees prosperity as a malfunction instead of a reward. Predictably, the result is capital flight, shuttered businesses, and an increasing dependence on federal aid to plug holes in a collapsing tax base. Experts warn that once a city crosses the threshold where more people take than give, recovery becomes nearly impossible. In New York is standing on that edge right now. Every millionaire leaving isn't just a headline. It's a teacher, unfunded, a firefighter, unpaid, a service cut. And when the foundation erodes, not even the wealthy can build walls high enough to hold back collapse. But the deeper issue is cultural. Crime once carried shame. Now it's celebrated as rebellion. Wealth once symbolized success. Now it paints a target. Hard work once meant virtue. Now it's framed as privilege. That inversion wasn't an accident. It was engineered by politics that reward outrage and punish achievement. Look around. Neighborhoods once filled with generational family businesses are now lined with pawn shops and boarded windows. The same city that sold the world on dreams of ambition and progress is now exporting fear faster than any commodity it ever produced. Through it all, the cops, nurses, cab drivers, and shop owners, the people who built the soul of this place, stand in the wreckage, wondering what happened. They didn't change. The rules did. New York's unraveling isn't a mystery. It's math paired with denial. If you punish, order, and reward chaos, you get more chaos. If you brand criminals as victims and victims as privileged, sooner or later, no one remembers who the good guys are. The final image comes from a street-level security camera. Two men in neon vests dragging a safe into a waiting car while the skyline flickers above them. Civilization, built on law, being carried away piece by piece while the lights still look beautiful. The mayor calls this the new normal. New Yorkers call it betrayal. If this investigation locked you in, don't forget to like and subscribe for more hard truth reports that cut through the noise. Because the next headline out of New York won't be about progress. It'll be about who's left to turn the lights off.